Hi, all. Thanks so much for joining. Speaking of making healthcare work for you, I'm Stephanie Fields, joined by my co-host, Dr. Apoorv Gupta, and our guest today is Arlen Meyers, the president and CEO of the Society of Physician Entrepreneurs, and also Emeritus Professor at the University of Colorado School of Medicine and lecturer at the Business School. So thank you so much for being here today.
Thanks very much for having me.
And we are really excited to talk to you. You have a lot of really great perspectives about physician entrepreneurs, why that's important. So why don't you tell us how you guys started SOPE and why it is an important thing for people to know?
I'll tell you the creation story. So in my first career, as you mentioned, I'm an ear, nose, and throat facial plastic surgeon by training. And I went through a fairly traditional career pathway, college and medical school and residency. And there was no gap in the resume. There was no gap. So as most physicians, you go from college to med school to residency to fellowship to work. And so that's what I did. And I always knew that for whatever reason, I wanted to be an academic surgeon. So I wind up being, an assistant professor, out of the box doctor. And I did that, and I had a career progression, as most academics do, with teaching, research, patient care, community service, usual stuff. And my subspecialty interest is in head and neck cancer. And my subspecialty interest was in oral cancer. And my subspecialty interest was in bioengineering. In the course of my clinical work, I did a lot of work in oral cancer, and we, myself and some other people, came up with this idea. Wouldn't it be nice if we could optically detect cancer in the mouth? So long story short, we came up with a gadget, myself, some engineers, some other people. The way it worked was, it was almost like a small pen light or a small flashlight size. And the idea was you shine it in the mouth at the thing that's wrong. And it not only illuminated what was wrong, but it detected what's called an optical signature, which is sort of like a Geiger counter for cancer. And then it measured it. So the gadget had a green light that said, no problem. The yellow light that said, we don't know. A red light that said, biopsy it. Or subsequently treat it, because there was a fairly good chance it was cancer. Anyway, so that was the deal. So I said to myself, now, at the time, I was clueless. All I knew was, I'm a doc, I see a problem, I thought this might have been a good idea. Now what? So we went through like a couple of years of testing, and research, and grants, and postdocs, and all that stuff. The outcome, incidentally, was the product never got to market. It was one of my failures, but actually I would call it a tie, because the intellectual property is still sitting on the shelf, and maybe there's something we can do with it. Anyway, the point is, that was so frustrating and so maddening. To this day, I'm angry. I'm seeking revenge. And people mistake my anger with passion. It's anger. I'm angry that I had to do that. So I say to myself, so what'd that teach me? One, I thought I had a good idea. I had absolutely no idea what to do with it, and no one was going to teach me what to do with it. So I say to myself, you know what? I'm probably not the only person that has been down this road. And I don't see a whole lot of medical schools doing this. I don't see a whole lot of trade associations doing this. I don't see a whole lot of medical societies teaching their members how to do this. So I guess I'm going to have to do it. So we, other people, concocted the Society of Physician Entrepreneurs to solve that problem. And we launched it in 2011.
That's really great. I love that you focus on those things, even that didn't work out how you originally planned, and still see the value and find how that's helping other people. And you said before, when we were talking before we recorded, that it was important if there's no margin, there's no business. And I think that's something that maybe people go into medicine and don't really think about that. But there really does have to be a strong business case for things. Otherwise, it's not going to survive and you're not going to be able to help anyone.
Like it or not, particularly in the United States, medicine is a business. Now, you may not like that, and we can get into all the arguments about is it a right, is it a privilege, whatever. But the fact of the matter is that if you are a physician practicing medicine in the United States, it is a business. And you need to understand, to be successful, the business of medicine, some of which is innovation and entrepreneurship. A lot of it is system science. A lot of it is medical practice management, although I think operations management is important. I used to be in private practice and I used to run my own business. But operations management is important. But in terms of thriving, you need, in my view, to practice medical practice entrepreneurship, because everything is changed and will continue to change. And like any business, if you don't adapt to the change, you will go out of business.
You were saying before, too, that sick care to healthcare is something that you're focused on. Is that something that people can still do through entrepreneurship? And tell us about what entrepreneurship means to you, from the various aspects of being a business owner, creating a company, to even working as a chief medical officer.
So just to back up a little bit, the United States presently spends, when I say United States, I mean us. We're the only payer. There's a single payer, us. Everybody else just distributes the money. The money ultimately comes from us. Taxes, employment, all this stuff. We're the single payer. So it's a misnomer to say, well, there should be a single payer system. Well, that's just a single redistribution system. It's not the payer, because it all comes from us, number one. Number two, the US healthcare, so-called sick care healthcare system, is really a sick care system of systems masquerading as a healthcare system. So what do I mean by sick? All the numbers. We spend too much, we get too little. Inequality, blah, blah, blah. Well, what do you mean sick care system of systems? There's the VA system. There's the Indian health system. There's the academic medical system. There's the public health system. There's the Medicare system. It's a system of systems that don't talk to each other. So it's very dysfunctional and is the root cause, actually, of a lot of the problems that have been magnified by COVID. The public health system doesn't talk to the sick care system, as evidenced by COVID. And we spend $3.8 trillion. It's just hard to get your head around how much $3.8 trillion really is. We're trying to transform the sick care system into a healthcare system. And the final point I would make is that even if sick care can't be fixed from inside, no industry can be fixed from inside. So when we created the Society of Physician Entrepreneurs, that's why we intentionally made it an open innovation network. You have to have outside in, inside out collaboration, open innovation, call it what you want. So SOPE, anybody can join, as long as you understand what we're trying to do and you're trying to help someone get an idea to a patient. This is a global problem. So if you look at the UN Sustainable Development Goals, there's several of them, and this one addresses number 3, which is health equity and health outcomes. So the big vision is How do we close global disparate health outcomes? The problem is a global demand, an infinite demand for health or sick care services with finite resources. So how do you optimize the supply and demand around the world? Now, we're talking global peace, global warming, food security. I mean, they're big goals, they're wicked problems, but you got to start somewhere. The mission and the way we're trying to accomplish that in our way is through innovation and entrepreneurship in sick care, translating it to healthcare so that it incorporates social determinants, behavioral health, all the other public health, all the other stuff that all of a sudden is now showing up on people's radar. Of course, it's been there forever. Anyone who has practiced in a safety net hospital like I have understands that the sick care system winds up with those that the other societal systems have failed. Homelessness, food insecurity, lack of education, income inequality, racial segregation, you name it. That all translates into sick care. So even if we're successful and fix the system, you still have to deal with the extra sick care systems that contribute to the problem. That's why it's a wicked problem.
Is there any evidence, Arlen, that the sick care system is being impacted positively through entrepreneurship?
It's a double-edged sword. I mean, there's evidence that it helps and evidence that it hurts. Typical examples. So what has COVID done to improve the sick care system is one part of the question. Well, we've all witnessed it. Telemedicine, virtual care, expedited regulations or waivers of regulations and regulatory pathways, acceleration of drugs, particularly vaccines, improvement or variations in predicting staff, stuff, and space for COVID in hospitals, people, ventilators, PPE, all that stuff. So there are innumerable ways that the crisis hasn't been wasted. On the other hand, there's lots of things where it really has, in some respects, made sick care worse. It's magnified the inequalities. It has unleashed a whole litany of things that supposedly worked but didn't, and subjected patients to things that were ineffective and in many ways harmful. It has created, without getting into the political issues, it's created misinformation, which has impacted our ability to change doctor and patient behavior, which to me is the holy grail. So there's lots, and oh, by the way, we haven't even talked about electronic medical records, data interoperability, data virtualization, artificial intelligence, the ethics of it all, the bias, we could get into this till we're blue in the face. It's magnified a lot of things that are both positive and negative. It's our challenge to fix those things that are damaging and expedite the things that help.
And you think it's entrepreneurial thinking ultimately that will solve that? Because as you said, it can kind of lead to both. And maybe the entrepreneur from the innovation perspective may come up with solutions, but the other side of it, having to solve a business need, does that then only wind up creating a company that's just hungry for more profits?
Yeah, the challenge for physician entrepreneurs, and maybe I should just back up a minute and just define entrepreneurship so we know what we're talking about. So to me, entrepreneurship is the pursuit of opportunity under volatile, uncertain, complex, ambiguous conditions with the goal of creating user-defined value through the deployment of innovation using a vast or a viable business model. So there's lots of different ways to do this, but the bottom line is user-defined value through the deployment of innovation, and do it in a way that you can stay afloat. Every doctor, conceivably in the world, is a potential, underlying potential physician entrepreneur. And it's up to them to decide and pick, where is the best place for me to spend my effort to try to solve a particular problem for a particular stakeholder? Now, to your question, when does oftentimes, if not always, the ethics and professionalism of medicine conflict with the ethics and professionalism of business? And since medicine is a business, how do you reconcile the two? People are afraid that their doctor will place a business interest above the patient's primary interest. And as we physicians know, that is a cardinal sin. You take the oath. You're supposed to place the interest of the patient primarily above all the other conflicting secondary interests, including business and making a profit. So I don't need to tell you, every doctor I know has treated patients for free. We all do that. You can't do it forever, but we all do that. So and I don't see a whole lot of businesses giving stuff away for free. I don't see Amazon saying, just go to our site and we'll send you stuff. So you have to reconcile the two. Now, so how do I reconcile it? I call it compassionate capitalism. And the goal is to equitably distribute what you have harvested in value. So therefore, every doctor is going to have to just place the interests of the patient first, do what they're capable of doing with the resources that are available. Sometimes we're placed in difficult situations, like these recent examples of overloaded ICUs and triaging patients who are going to die from COVID. That's what you sign up for when you become a doctor. Part of the drill. But does that mean you ignore all the other business issues? No. If you do, you will go out of business. And as I said before, if you don't pay attention to the business of medicine, you have no business practicing medicine.
You said before that getting into the entrepreneurship is something that people should be thinking of from the time they're very young. You actually said it started in preschool and you have to start building that pipeline. So how do you do that and help people steer into what they should be doing to really make a difference?
If you are interested in this pathway, my suggestion and my comment to parents is that the entrepreneurial mindset is probably the most important part of innovation. That mindset actually begins relatively early. And if you look at the career pathways of so-called successful entrepreneurs, one of the characteristics is that at a very young age, like 6 years old, you started working for money on your own. Well, my first job was selling newspapers on the beach in Atlantic City when I was 7 years old. American educators are beginning to realize that now, of course, the hot topic, pardon the pun, is STEAM. So science, technology, engineering, and math, it's been morphed into STEM, morphed into STEAM, science, technology, engineering, arts, humanities, and math. And that's morphed into STEAM-E, STEAM, innovation, and entrepreneurship. So gradually these programs are being developed and diffused around the world. by the, in graduate school, and I'm talking PhDs, postdocs, people that are, by the time I get them, it's too late. It's not hopeless because I've been doing it for many years, and there are many, many examples of success. But my point is, we would have a much bigger pipeline of people prepared to succeed if we were to rethink how we do this. And frankly, I think there's a very large role for government to set policy, to prioritize some of these things. I'm not saying run them. I'm saying facilitate the development of them. And depending on your political philosophy, get out of the way and let people do what they do best.
I wonder whether you could comment a little bit on the physician's potentially unique role as social entrepreneur. And if we had more of them, then could that be one way where we could really fix this system of systems that you're talking about?
So if you conceptualize the Venn diagram as two overlapping circles. So one circle is the clinical mindset. The other circle is the entrepreneurial mindset. And the place that we're discussing are where the two intersect. Because physicians are trained to have a clinical mindset, they are in a unique position to possibly, potentially contribute to the development and deployment of innovation as we've been discussing. They have a scientific approach to things. Well, it's the same thing in business. And in fact, the lean startup methodology and all the customer discovery, lean startup, value prop, business model canvas, et cetera, is all about experimenting. So there's lots of overlap. However, as I said, there are differences between the clinical mindset and the entrepreneurial mindset.
Mm-hmm. Got it.
So you have to reconcile the two. And that's where the sweet spot is, in the middle. Up until recently, the last thing in the world you want to do at a medical school interview is say, when the question comes, why do you want to be a doctor? You say, well, I want to be a doctor because I want the MD after my name. I have no intention of seeing patients. My father is a venture capitalist. I want to create a biotech company. And I'm just doing this to get the MD after my name for credentials and credibility. I have no intention of doing a residency. I think I already have a job in a startup. If you were to say that, and in many, many places now, if you say that, your chances of getting into medical school are slim to none. So what does that mean? How does that translate into what we're talking about? It screens out people who have an entrepreneurial mindset or who are interested in this stuff. So you just wind up with conformity. The ethos of medicine is conformity. Do no harm. Evidence-based guidelines. Follow the script. Don't deviate unless you're not, stay within the guardrails. The whole point of innovation and entrepreneurship is to make all that obsolete.
The final question, whenever you work with these people and you have the people that got through the 1% to 2% that might have the entrepreneurial mindset that got through medical school, made it through, might be in private practice now, what would you tell them? How can SOPE help them? And who's welcome to join SOPE?
Right. Anybody's welcome to join. If this is something you want to do and you think you're motivated to do it, you have to come down off the mountain. What got you here won't get you there. Your MD, your MBA, your whatever after your name is relatively immaterial. Second, you have to know what you, because at this point, you don't know what you don't know. So you have to find out what you don't know. And that means you need education, resources, networks, mentors, experience, peer-to-peer support, and non-clinical career guidance. That's what SOPE does.
How can people join?
You go to www.soapnet.org and you sign up. You pay $80 and you're good to go. Now, that's just the beginning. And like any organization, you get out what you put in. We're not going to, you don't depend on us to make you into a physician entrepreneur. We are there to provide you with the resources you need to be successful if you are internally motivated to do it.
Thank you so much for sharing this. This was a really fascinating conversation about things that I don't think most people really think about every day. So we appreciate it.
Thank you. I enjoy the opportunity to share our story.
Thank you so much. Thank you all for watching. Bye-bye.
Bye.